hats and follow with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Turn your mics on, please.
It's on. Welcome to the September 20th, 2023 meeting of the City of Toledo Planning Commission. Could I get a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on that or the business licenses?
Negative.
Call a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Or is this the agenda we want to go with commission reports?
Oh, if you have commission reports, go for it.
I don't believe anybody has assigned any, so,
I don't have any commission report to report.
okay. And
Likewise.
move on to new business. Building permit application, Mr. Kurt Redding. How are you today, sir?
Well, thank you.
Second time to the city hall today, I hear.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and before us, you have an application for a building permit for the 12-plex.
Yeah.
Okay, and is Todd with us?
There it is.
I am.
Hi, Todd.
Am I unmuted?
No, we can hear you, buddy.
We can hear you.
All right.
Did you want to give us a brief recapitulation of your staff report, which I read with interest?
Sure. I'm basically, there's a 12-plex building permit that's been proposed. And upon our initial review of it, it appears that this could meet the City of Toledo's zoning and land use codes, as well as utility and other with some additional conditions. So staff is adding a condition that requires providing a minimum of 100 square feet of recreation space for each dwelling unit, which is a requirement in Toledo's multifamily design standards. And then just demonstrate adequate buffers and screening to separate the recreation space from streets, parking area, and driveway. Again, that comes right out of the code. Parking areas to be buffered from surrounding residential uses. And then all lighting to illuminate parking areas will be arranged so as to direct light away from adjoining land uses. And then at the request of Public Works and the city consulting engineer, we added comply with Public Works standards for utility connections and comply with additional Public Works requirements for access and frontage improvements. What I don't see in here that I think was maybe a later add, and I'm not sure if that's in the staff report that you all have, is that that Mr. Redding has also requested and been approved for a street vacation. However, he has not finalized that. So in the version of the staff report that I intended to issue, there was an additional condition in there, basically just requiring Mr. Redding to complete that before the city could approve the building permit. Right now.
Mr. Redding came in this morning and took care of that.
Yeah, thanks, Ben.
Did you hear that?
I didn't.
Mr. Redding took care of that this morning.
Oh, okay. But it,
Okay, I was hoping we could go through these small areas. There's a list of permitted uses and some that deals with 100 square foot. There are a couple of things that caught my attention that I'm sure the developer would want clarified, and I certainly do. The recreation space, is it your intent to put a small park in on this small playground area, or?
I would put in what's best for the community and what you guys, what the planning commission and the city council would like. I don't want to make it something that's amenable to the city or not
Well, if you're looking at 12 units, you're looking at 1,200 square foot, so
Right, pretty small.
pretty small. But then again, I grew up in a 1,200 square foot house, so
Yeah, but I mean, you have the city park right there.
You
as far
do.
as the park is concerned, like, so my thought is, I mean, I don't know what makes the most sense, but I'm open to, ideate on it and work together.
yeah, I agree. The park's right across the street, so why build a duplicate?
Right. But
Um,
just something cool, some feature or something that would look really nice and bring the community together, and I'm open to that. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I have to say that if I were, well, I once was, but if I were the parents of young children, I probably wouldn't, in today's climate, I probably wouldn't send them over to the park unattended. I'd much rather have them, on the premises.
Yeah, young children.
Yeah.
well, you could do a 30 by 40 fenced play area, so your toddlers and young kids can't get out. I think that's what probably the parents fear the most.
I'd be fine with that, like a fenced area, the playground, like small structures.
Just small structures.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well,
You guys have any other ideas?
It's interesting to think about, and it's good to be so amenable, like, to see, like. Really look at the space and see what would benefit what is lacking from the park, or what is lacking from that spot, to see how we can best do it, so, but 1,200 feet is quite small. So,
What's the size of this room, Mayor?
1,200 feet.
650 feet.
So, I mean, it's not that
it's
small.
not that small, you're right.
You know,
It's enough space for a decent playground.
Mm-hmm.
something with some benches for the parents to watch the kids in a merry-go-round or a jungle gym or something, and,
Yeah.
minimal, but
Mm-hmm.
something that they feel good about taking their kids out to. And that they're safe. I don't have an issue with number 2, adequate buffers and screening to separate the recreation space from the public streets. On number 3, Todd, all parking areas shall be buffered from surrounding residential uses. Is it our intention that we're gonna want him to build a wall or a fence to separate parking from? Reading this, they want it unseen.
It's not unseen, it just has to be screened. Usually what that is in most jurisdictions, it's about a 3-foot tall hedgerow or a berm or some other landscaping. And mainly what that is to block vehicle headlights. So that as people are pulling into their parking spaces, their headlights don't shine into the residential properties that are adjoining it. In this one, you've got a park across the street. You've got residential property across Maple Street, and then there's the existing residence to remain. So presumably that landscaping could be installed on the neighboring property, since Mr. Reddy owns all of it. But all we're asking is to demonstrate that there's screening involved to keep mainly just those vehicle headlights from shining into the neighbor's property at night when the apartment goers come in. It's fairly common. We're not asking for it to be totally screened from visibility. That has other safety concerns. For community policing, they like to be able to see into parking lots, and they like people to be able to see in, so that it cuts down on car prowls and other things. So a total screen really isn't appropriate for this type of thing. But that's where that standard comes from.
Did you have thoughts on?
And if planning commission sees fit, they could waive that standard along 6th Street if it is a long park. That would be something, because in that case, headlights shining into the park at night, probably a bad idea. So you could waive the screening standard along 6th, or you could also waive it along Maple if you found that the separation being across the street was sufficient to keep lights from shining into neighboring properties across the street. So it really is there's a little bit of discretion in there, because you can find that the existing conditions created that circumstance proposed.
Okay.
And I believe there's a copy of the site plan in your packet as well.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
the only-
haven't received the full building permit submittal set on this yet. So what we're working on here are the illustrating drawings that that were submitted in the site plan, and that was adequate to get a staff report put together.
Now, I understand, based on what I read in here, I guess once the plans are developed, then we'll get another look-see, right?
It won't come back to planning commission again unless you
I thought it said it
specifically
did.
request. No, with this staff report and the conditions and the discussion tonight, this won't come back before planning commission unless it's significantly different from what's proposed here in this application. So what we're trying to do with both of these tonight is just to get it expedited so we can get the planning commission hearing over and accomplished with, and that way when they're ready to submit, it can go right on to plan review and permitting. But certainly, if you'd like to see it back, Chair Birch, that, I mean, you
I
could
don't wanna
always
hold them
continue it.
up. I just thought I read somewhere in here that it was something that was going to happen.
It is, but it's not intended to come back to planning commission again. This is the only time this will be in front of planning commission.
That's right. It says all amended plans shall be submitted to the city of Toledo. And you're then talking about the council, correct?
No, council actually has already approved the street vacation. So after planning commission reviews and approve this, it goes right on to review by our building official and civil engineer and public works. And then I'll review it again to make sure that the conditions in the staff report are met. But that's it. After that, it's just an administrative approval.
I don't think that's the way our code reads, though. I think that it actually reads that it goes back to planning commission. Because we did not want at one point in time to have staff issuing building permits with no construction experience whatsoever.
Yeah, and so this is that review absent the actual plan set. Mr. Reddick hasn't submitted that plan set yet. I was hoping this was adequate to get through planning commission, but if it's not, then we could continue it until such time as it's that, and then we could have a full meeting on it. But
Well,
this,
I don't necessarily think it's not enough for this particular use. But this can't be the way we're going to do it in the future when we start dealing with subdivisions and multi-lot things. Yes, sir.
okay,
If I may, this seems large enough that we would want a public hearing on this.
Well, we will have a
I'd
public
like
hearing.
the public to get a shot at what's getting built, not to shoot it down, but just to make sure everybody understands and has an opportunity to say their piece.
Is that part of the process?
not typically for building permits, no. I mean, the planning commission meeting is a public meeting, but this wasn't noticed as a public hearing. The requirements in code just say the planning commission approves building permits. And that was something that was new to me as well. In most jurisdictions that doesn't happen. And I think Chair Birch pointed that out to me after I had approved a building permit to go on for county review. He pointed out that there was a code section in there that does say that planning commission has to approve on that before we sign off on anything and send it off to anyone for review.
And the reason for that is we don't have a public works department like most cities do, and we don't have a planning department like most cities do. So all the things that would be handled in those departments don't have anybody in them to handle it. And it was, somebody had to, and if I'm going to give my experience to the job, it seemed better to come back to planning commission because you get a real result out of it rather than I like blue, so you're going to put blue in. There needs to be some reasoning behind anything we do. It's just that this is very basic and is not at all what I envisioned us doing from a development standpoint, with having nobody with the experience to look at these things and decide whether it makes sense or not.
Well, so this is a new process for me as well. I mean,
Yes.
these are the first two building permits that I've put before planning commission. So if I've done that out of order from what you'd like to see or what the sequence should be, what I've set up does comply with the city code, but it may not be what you want this to be, and you may want complete building permit sets to come forward before I bring it to planning commission. And if so, then that's appropriate to direct staff to do that. And I'd be happy to do that.
I think on our subdivisions, we have the benefit of having, Mike and his staff reviewing all the civil plans and things like that. For small plot or plats and single individual homes, we're not gonna have any oversight whatsoever. And we need to have some oversight. Even if it's just a push through.
You, by code, you will have approval authority over all building permits. Even single family residential building permits. So all building permits before they're sent on for review have to be approved by planning commission.
Right.
But it doesn't, it just says that they must be approved by planning commission. It's not specific as to when. In the old process, when Lewis County was reviewing building permits, then what it appeared to me should have happened was before I signed the planning approval and sent it off to Lewis County with the conditions, that I should have come to planning commission with this. So this was my attempt at trying to do what I thought was consistent with code. And again, I apologize, Chair Birch, if this is not what you're used to.
Necessary. This is a learning process for all of us for that.
Yeah, in the future, in the future, we can bring these back with when a complete permit application has come in. We can change up, the process. As for this one, if you'd like to see a complete plan set, then you could simply continue this meeting until Mr. Reddig's ready to submit for his full building permit. And when he does, we'll bring it back to planning commission and you can continue your discussion with a more technical review of the building plans at that point, if you like. And the thing is, with planning commission meeting once a month, it is going to slow down building permits, as no building permit can move until planning commission approves it. So either planning commission is going to have to meet more regularly, or you're going to experience some delays in approving building permits.
I don't have an issue with the planning commission meeting more often, like every other Wednesday instead of every third Wednesday of the month. That would have to be, we'd have to take a poll between my fellow commissioners on whether that works for them or not. And I'm hearing grumbling, so. Or it could be a case-by-case basis if we need to have a meeting because we've got something upcoming. I don't want to be responsible for holding back people that want to get going.
Right.
But I've built in this county myself, and I didn't get a building permit until I came in with full sets of plans that were marked up, returned to me, marked up, returned to me. And here we are, we're doing essentially what amounts to a sketch on a napkin and going before planning commission seeking approval. And that, I know more thought has gone into it than that, but I mean, there are no plans and there are no schematics on elevations or driveway widths or where the parking or the size of the parking.
Question, just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Hypothetically, even if I had a building permit right now, we don't think you're not set up to actually do this inspections, right, at this time, so.
Well, we both know that's true, yes.
So we don't, I don't really disagree with what you're saying, and I have full intention to have, full plan sets. In this case, it requires an elevation certificate, and we have to be 1/5 above base flood elevation for the finished floor height. There's a bunch of criteria that have to happen down here, and so, we just built those houses on Pine Street, and it's a big, long list of stuff, so you're absolutely right. That being said, and I don't really care either way how you proceed, timing wise, because we can't get started regardless, right?
Right.
So if you feel more comfortable waiting to have full plan sets and a little bit better articulation of where all the utilities are connected.
My only conundrum is the fact that with the county having their list that you went through previously in building. They had staff to go over those lists, and there is no staff here yet. There will be, hopefully quickly. But all of the things that you mentioned as necessary are something I thought the planning commission was going to get a look at prior to building permit, and that doesn't appear to be the case. So
And
it's something
Chair Birch,
that internally we probably need to work on.
Yeah, again, Chair Birch, that is my fault. I just wasn't aware of what process you had envisioned, and I should have talked to you about it first. In this case, I was just trying to move these things forward, and I probably did that too quickly. I should have waited until a complete building permit application came in and prepared a staff report based on that and brought that to Planning Commission.
I actually don't have a problem approving this moving forward.
This particular one, you're talking about,
Right.
you're talking about the system that we set up and going forward.
Yes,
Yeah, I agree.
does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah, because we already heard this guy talk about all this, that we know we don't have the complete plan, but we've already heard he's amendable and.
And
We're just
your
having
approval
that.
here tonight isn't a construction approval. You're just approving this to go on to building plan review by the city building official, who at this point is still Lewis County. Mr. Reddick's indicated a desire to wait to submit that until the city is able to process those internally. So
do we need a motion on this?
I mean, my goal is to see City of Toledo get the revenue.
Our goal is that too.
And I know that's your goal, so like, I want.
site build structures, but
we need to do.
I'd be happy to work with you and the rest of the city staff to figure out what an appropriate process is.
Okay, so could I, yes, sir.
Chair Birch, maybe what we could be doing, and I appreciate you working with us, because, you know, we spoke and we both want that. Maybe what we need is a workshop to talk about our process, and you might be invaluable, since you just built 2 houses down here, so you know what needs to happen to go to elevation. And, I mean, I don't want you to put it in a weird place, but we might want to ask you some questions as we're going through it and creating a process.
Especially with your local experience.
Yeah, and you work with Robert, so you know how it's supposed to fit in.
It's fairly straightforward. I mean,
Yeah.
all the documentation is there, you just collaborate, like Winlock City, Winlock, Lewis County, and bring it together, merge it, and you have a checklist essentially. As a prerequisite to submitting for your building application, and then you just make sure all those requirements are fulfilled. And then the other part of this too is I don't even want to start too early without you knowing what's there, because I'm like halfway through and you're like, it's not what I envisioned. I'd rather all of us be on the same page before I start. We know what we're all expecting. And you all like it and I like it, and
Well, I would not object to a workshop with staff and yourself on this project.
that'd be great.
Can you try to figure out how to schedule that?
Your schedule it for- I know you have so much free time.
Yes, Joe.
The
Todd said vacating
the street.
I'm sorry?
Todd mentioned vacating the street.
Yeah.
What street?
Oh, it's an alley.
So the alley that you vacated at the last meeting.
Yes.
So. What's the city get out of this whole thing?
For that, they got $6,800.
I mean, building apartments right next to the park. And the elementary school.
Well, we get more housing that we desperately need,
But you have that plan for the top of the hill
and those are single-family residences.
right now, but why are they just single family residences? You already have a traffic issue, he just told you. At one meeting, that it's 100 trips or 10 trips per house a day.
What are you getting at? I'm not sure.
Well, if you put 300 houses up there, that's 3,000 trips a day.
And we suspect that they're gonna reach the point of, I think we talked about this at
I
one of the
would make it
meetings.
a fair assumption that 12 apartments is gonna be 120 trips a day. Right? And then you're gonna take the revenue you've been making off the reservations of the park, which I think is gonna tank because those kids will be playing in the park like it's their backyard. Whether he puts in,
They're gonna be citizens of the city of Toledo. Why wouldn't they have a right to play in the park?
they do, I'm just saying. They'll be using it like their backyard, their dogs will be over there crapping and stuff. As they said.
Well, those are ordinance issues,
Yeah.
Joe, that we don't need to get into right now.
We didn't get into the 12 apartment thing last week when you said, no, we're just dealing with vacate the alley. You don't get to know what his plan is.
Well, we're gonna hold a public hearing on this, Joe, and I think you'll have an opportunity to speak your mind when that happens.
Well, I'm trying to do it now.
But
What's
this
the
isn't a
difference?
public hearing.
Okay, I'll wait for a public hearing. I'm just saying, I don't think this is a good idea at all. Because I don't.
So,
Downtown.
Chair Burt,
Yes,
there's not a public hearing on building permit applications currently as part of the process. If you wish to hold a public hearing on this, then again, that is definitely something you can do. Again, you could table the application tonight. We could notice and schedule a public hearing for the next meeting. These building permits are administrative approvals. And in Toledo, that approval authority is delegated to Planning Commission and then currently delegated to Lewis County to actually do the technical review of them. So there is no public hearing required for a
I
building
thought I
permit.
heard you say there was gonna be a public hearing on this matter.
Eric said-
No, there was one on,
Request for it.
Right, Eric requested that.
I don't have a problem with the public hearing.
We've had that for 4 years up until the last 2 years, so this is a new process to us.
Mhm.
And we're starting for it, so we should have an opportunity for the other to speak.
Absolutely.
I think they should be heard.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I think the public should be heard. My thought is, they just got this reservation thing going for the park. I think this is going to detract from that. Seriously, people want to park their RVs there. You got a dozen kids playing there night and day.
I don't think that's an issue, Joe. I think
I think it's different.
we're gonna have to agree to disagree.
Kurt, this isn't gonna slow you down if we wait to have a public discussion about this, right? So
No,
that makes it an easy decision.
I mean, I don't know how the code's written, but for a building permit, you don't generally have a public hearing. And I would agree, like, this is as public hearing as like the code says it should be, but if you guys wanna have a public hearing and hash it out, by all means. I don't wanna build something where I got like half the town angry about it. I mean, I just think it makes sense. You obviously think it doesn't make sense. But, you know, we need housing and I intend to build housing that's nice. And it's not gonna be Section 8 or affordable housing. It's gonna be housing, it's gonna be nice and it's not gonna, believe it or not, it's not gonna attract people that, it's not gonna be low income. So it's gonna attract a different type of person. So, I mean,
Well, that would be my question, what are the demographics and the psychographics of the development?
the demographics are that the current population is gonna be lower income than the required income to move into.
I'd like to point out that the demographics in this case are imaginary. We're talking about being afraid of the folks occupying the park too much and their dogs pooping on there. So this is a, well, there's a prediction that that's gonna happen, or it's gonna tank some good sales that are going on in the park. That's one way to look at it, I guess. I don't know if that's really something to be assured of is going to happen.
Here's the bigger argument. This is what I see. We're after impact fees, meter fees or installation fees. His money, because he's gonna pay a comp price for vacating the alley. But never in a conversation have I ever heard said, how about we figure out how to get more businesses in town to
You don't have
generate
the
more
people to
general
support
revenue?
that, sir. You do not have the people to support that. That's the problem with Toledo. It hasn't grown in 40 years. Our population is down over the last 40 years. If you don't ever let any growth in Toledo, you will have the population
You can
combined.
that, but the population here doesn't wanna grow, that's my point. This is an old town, you just have the picture right there.
Of a vibrant town, but
Leave it an old town. And put everything up on the hill.
We could have Old Town and let it die.
Well, it's not gonna die because the people are gonna die, because they're in their eighties. And then the young people are gonna want to move in here, but then they
And
won't
if
want
we
to.
wait until then, we'll be part of the county and
Or-
be a city.
Or how about this?
This is totally subject for a different time and place.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I have a concern about the property regarding the sidewalk. And I haven't seen any sidewalks on your plan for that lot, and there aren't any sidewalks on that street. Sixth Street, north, south, Sixth Street is kind of like one lane, it doesn't have any sidewalks on it. And that could be a lot of traffic, kids going back and forth to school and stuff, and we're trying to put in like I think the planning commission is trying to put a sidewalk policy in place for future development.
Well, right now, the way the code reads is you can require sidewalks as frontage improvements, but the code also says they can tear them out.
Well, sidewalks are owned by the resident. I don't know how they can tear them out, but.
Sorry, look at the code.
If the.
They have to maintain it.
And until we get to the point where we're altering our code to take care of that situation, I'm not gonna require anyone to put in a sidewalk that can be torn out.
Well, you just can't tear them out though. Or I put a curb cut in so I could make a drive-through coffee shop,
Mhm.
but instead. I asked for what they wanted from me now, and they said, you gotta do this, 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 and this, and those things tripled the price of doing a curb cut, so I didn't do it.
I think we had that discussion.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. So,
Well, nobody would put in a sidewalk and then take it out, but they have the right to.
Because they have plants that grow and trees that grow and they start to buckle the sidewalk and so they take the sidewalk
A
out.
lot of the sidewalks are 100 years old.
And also seen some that are little waiting for soothing. So. When we get to the point where we're paving our streets from right of way to right of way with curbs and gutters
Stripes.
and all that,
that's what I'm saying, why put it in the old town? Put the new stuff up on the hill and make it nicer up there,
well, the new stuff that you talk about is what?
single family housing,
They are going up on the hill
right?
and they're being required
But why
to
put
frontage
it
with sidewalk.
here in addition, well, you can just put it all up there.
There's nothing I can say to stop him. It's private property. He can do what he wants with it.
China,
Right,
they could cover everything.
but, I mean, I'm just saying. I think there's a lot of different ways you could go about making this town better. I don't think I'd be doing a 12 apartment right down by the park in the elementary school. 'Cause as a landlord, the lesson is, anytime you get over like a quadplex, you start getting issues with police and.
Yeah, I don't think that's the issue here.
You can say that, but.
How many rentals do you have?
25 doors.
And get the regular police over to them regularly, do you?
I don't get tenants.
Well,
I get good tenants. You surround yourself with bad people, you get calls. You surround yourself with good people, it's the opposite. Try to check the background.
So,
Come into the park to then,
I'm sorry,
how's it gonna be when the RVs come into the park? Right there,
what are you talking about?
to the park entrance,
Uh-huh.
it's right there in the corner, isn't it?
All the parking is not gonna be on street.
The parking's on the private property.
Yeah.
Well, we see that, we hear that, but we still see it around town where they are.
Well,
Meaning-
Dan, come here
meaning-
for a sec.
Increased parking spaces taken up is what you're worried about?
That's a good idea.
So, Chair Birch, just to talk a little bit about the requirements for sidewalks, one of the recommended
No,
staff
it's
conditions
not.
included compliance.
That's actually not a number one thing.
Yeah. I've seen some rentals and I've seen some situations. Good plan, but sometimes the plan don't work out.
Well, you can't proceed with the notion of failure. You have to assume that Kurt's gonna put in the 12-plex. There'll be parking for everybody who lives there.
I don't actually know what the code is for number of spaces per dwelling. In this, because you have.
Number of parking spaces.
So I'm pulling up the code now to see what the required number of parking spaces is. It is in there. Just take me a minute if you want to. In section 6.04 of your code, and for apartments, it's 2 for each dwelling unit and 2 visitor spaces for every 5 dwelling units. So that means this one should have a minimum of so this one should have a minimum of 28 parking spaces. And that's from table 1 of section 6.04. Either everybody got very quiet or I lost audio. I'm not sure which.
I agree with that. I agree with that. All right. Public hearing, you got it. All right.
Oh, thank you, Sunshine.
Are we back?
Yes, I've got you now.
Okay.
In the interest of making this not a night-long affair, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, you wanted to have a public hearing on this?
Yeah.
How quickly can we facilitate something like that?
Yeah, 2 weeks. 2 weeks before, yeah.
Kurt, how are you with that?
That's fine.
And we'll
So-
sustain all other discussion on this until the public hearing.
So it'll have to be long,
Will
it'll
you
have to
look
be
out?
longer than 2 weeks.
Making sure you're not out of town.
A couple meetings every
Yes.
day, Monday through Thursday.
So it'll have to be longer than 2 weeks because public hearings are required to be published in the newspaper and noticed. So even if we got the public notice out tomorrow, it would not publish in the newspaper for another 3 or 4 days. So it'll be about three to 4 weeks out.
So 2.5 weeks. If we get the notice in Saturday's paper, then it'd be. Looking at my calendar. 2 weeks from. Whatever that,
Saturday, so
the 17 days.
we could have it on the ninth.
The 9th of
October 9th.
October. So October 9th would be the earliest.
So can I get a motion to table this until the public hearing?
Oh.
28, but.
Get a second on that?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And carries. C3, 17 days
On the ninth.
on the night.
I'll remind you. I'll remind you.
And we might want to check on those parking space requirements
I heard a 28 and 27, so.
We should get a variance.
Yeah.
on the code. Okay, item number 2, building permit application Toledo School District, was that? Still part of this agenda?
Yeah.
It is.
It is. And I have prepared a staff report on that one as well, Chair Birch, if you'd like me to present that, but
I would.
this one is a little bit different than the other one in that this is a building permit for modular classroom placement. As I'm sure you're aware, modular classrooms do go through a building permit review, but it's not the same as a permit review. These are pre-constructed structures that are certified to meet state building code standards. And the building official just verifies that they're certified. They don't, there's no inspection or anything like that that is done other than on the placement for ADA requirements. So the structures themselves are pre-manufactured structures. I've included some photographs in your packet of what these are. So there are no building plans that are available for these. It is just the manufacturer's certification that they meet state building code standards.
They'll just
and
show
they'll be
up on the
required.
truck and get set, right?
Pardon me?
They'll essentially just show up on a truck and get set.
That's correct.
Okay.
The pads will have to be constructed to standards and then sidewalks to access them or access as needed to meet ADA standards. So this one is a little bit more straightforward and that's not requiring as much of a building permit review. If that is okay with you, then basically our requirements in this are pretty minimal. Comply with public works standards for utility connections to any public access and standards if frontage improvements or access improvements are required. So basically, because they didn't submit anything other than the schematic site plan, then we're just requiring them to comply with public works standards for utility connections for these, and then also demonstrate that they're not taller than 45 feet. I've actually seen the structures. They're not taller than 45 feet, but it just doesn't show that in anything that they've submitted.
Okay,
That'll be a very tall portable.
Yeah, that would be a very tall portable. There are pictures included in your packet, and the school district is online tonight as well, represented if you'd like to ask them any questions about this.
no, I think we're good with that. So just call for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve, and then that gives them the right to submit for the plan review and permit process.
I'll make a motion to approve. Toledo Schools.
Second motion.
Any other discussion?
just one thing, the photos that we saw, Todd, in the packet,
Yes,
it looks like those might be, used.
they.
Yeah.
They are, the school district's online, and that may be a better question for them, but they're basically purchasing these from a different school that no longer needs them.
Right.
And I guess it's a really good deal for all involved, and they may actually show up on site, up on the school district property early before they get a building permit, just to store them there, because the people that are looking to get rid of them just need to get rid of them. So they might show up and be stored on school district property and not utilized as classrooms are occupied. And then before they're occupied, they'll have to go through the plan review and permit process for placement.
Okay,
But those photos are them in their existing location down in Kelso.
oh, all right, all right.
Any further discussion? Can I get a vote? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Finished business. Is there anything else that we needed to bring up?
In the unfinished business?
Um,
I'm trying to think.
I don't think so.
Doesn't seem like it.
Mr. Not?
I could give you an update on either I or Mayor Pro Tem Hayes could give you an update on today's meeting with Lewis County. Today was the Planned Growth Committee meeting, and both I attended virtually by phone, and Mayor Pro Tem Hayes was there in person. So if you'd like an update on that, maybe the Mayor Pro Tem could give you an update.
Feel free.
He says feel free.
Be succinct.
So basically, council at the last Toledo City Council meeting, they agreed that it was a good idea to kind of opt in to participating. So we've expressed an interest in doing that. I guess the biggest thing that they said is that the county would like to start to have local jurisdictions give them early notice if an urban growth boundary expansion is likely to happen in this process. I know that we've kind of talked about it as a community, and I think some expansion of our urban growth area is in order because we've consumed a lot of it with this last annexation. So we might want to schedule that for a discussion in front of Planning Commission, and then get some sort of a recommendation as to how to proceed so we can actually give the county back the information. They'd like before the end of the year some direction from communities on generally if they would like to expand their urban growth boundaries, or they also offered that there's new legislation that allows you to remove areas from your urban growth boundary and add others in. So either swap or just adding or just modifying, but they'd like to kind of know without specifics, they'd like to know generally the end of the year about how much expansion is proposed and generally which direction or where, without specific properties. So I'll need to bring that back for discussion at Planning Commission before I can provide the county with any direction. So we'll need to probably have a few workshops on that, and then maybe even try to get that scheduled for a public meeting or a public hearing at Planning Commission, and then see if we can get the approval to do that too.
Okay.
That's all I had.
Before we adjourn, I was hoping that the chief would stick around, and Todd, I was hoping you'd stay online. Because I wanted to talk to the chief a little bit about impact fees. And what's
Okay,
going
I'd be
happen.
happy to hang out and chat for a few minutes. No problem.
Can I get a motion? Yes. Anybody want to say anything else? Yes, sir.
Can we have the chief talk a little tiny bit about why we have alleyways and what the reason for them, and do we need to keep them, and are they ever used? If they in the spot. From the fire department.
Safety. Actually, I was driving around town today a little bit, just kind of looking at things, and really, we don't have alleyways like in other cities, where it's a definite road between your blocks. So we don't use them, we're not missing that one that you're maybe vacated. So we're kind of used to not having alleyways. That's kind of our take on it.
If somebody builds something or just parks all their stuff on the house, do they have to buy it from the property or is it just the right of way or something?
Boy, that has been,
I don't know.
yeah, that's been a catch-all for, every scenario you can believe of. Has been used, people sort of take it over.
Yeah.
And claim it as their own. People stay away from it, claiming that they can't do it because there's. And some of the people that leave it alone have giant poles in the way, so no one could use it as an alleyway anyway. So every alley has its own story, essentially.
It depends upon how it's an alley. It appears to me, although I can't see it on the parcels anymore, that this particular alley was owned by the city. According to the lot lines.
Right, city owned all, I believe, all the
That
lots.
case is different than most alleys, which are typically easements. For example, when he put his fence in, he had to deal with the easement, right?
Yep.
That particular alley down there is actually owned by the city.
Was owned,
Well, unless he bought it already. but-
he did,
But typically, when it's owned by the city, it's supposed to go to auction. Because there's people out there that make a living by buying those pieces just to piss people off. And resell them for a higher price.
no, that's not the way it works.
But some jurisdictions allow you to give them split them between the two neighboring pieces or three pieces. In this case, it happens to be, he owns them all,
Correct,
so.
Well, he owns the properties on both sides of it
Right.
too, so if he was to split it,
Right, it's still his property any way you look at it.
okay,
It's kind of a gray area, could you put a fence right down the middle of that?
You can't.
If it's an
You can get a
easement,
fence.
if it's an easement, then it's, I think that the term is, it's for ingress and egress only, right? You can come in and you can come out, you can't park anything on it. You can't block it, if you put a fence up to block to, you don't want cows or something getting out, then everybody that has, property on that easement has to have access to that fence, so. It belongs to somebody, the easement belongs to somebody and they have control over it. But whoever's using it, it's only for ingress and egress only, like you can come in and you can come out, you can't park on it or anything like that.
The city does accept requests to have long-term use of the alley, so we have a number of those. Or of the, what we're calling alleys. Most people just have them, just build fences to them like. His neighbor. I think the only alley we have that's an actual alley is the church.
church,
The Presbyterian church, and technically, it's the church's property that gets used as the alley because the alley's not drivable. So on the good wishes of the church, that is an alley that's used, and it's one of the few places also that has garages off the back of it.
right,
I guess the north Toledo, there's a couple back streets. Actually,
I hadn't thought about it, but that is really the only true alley, isn't it? Yeah,
well, there is some, in north, I'm sorry, I was mostly talking about south.
Yeah.
Because we had issues with that last year. Oh, there, go ahead.
moving along, can I get a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
Second,
second,
all in favor,
aye.
adjourn.
Thank you, Chairman.
So Joe.
So chief,
So.
hey Todd,
Yes, sir.
You don't, you also just.